Hey everyone, thanks for checking out episode 5 of Dissecting Gundam. I am Hatter, your host, and today I'd like to do something a little bit different before we dive into the action-packed episode Re-Entry to Earth. So let's take a step back and take a look at some of the themes that we've seen crop up in the first 4 episodes and expand upon how we can expect them to grow and change as the story moves forward. This is your spoiler warning. Let's hop in. So the first major theme that we see explored is that of duty and responsibility. And this is a big one from the outset because it's one of the main themes that Tomino wanted to explore from the series pitch document that we saw in the NHK documentary. I'll post a link to that down in the description below if you have not checked it out yet. It is an amazing look at the men that created Gundam. Now this theme is most typified by Amuro and Bright. In Amuro's case, we see a character who shows a great amount of courage to overcome a crippling fear of fighting and death in order to defend his friends. The crew of the White Base has been under constant attack since leaving Side 7, and Amuro has had to bear the most responsibility in keeping the ship safe. Now, this is not out of some allegiance to the Federation, but as a duty to the innocent people that have been brought on board. Now, in Bright's case, he has to step up and assume control of a warship with no formal experience and find unconventional ways to motivate Amuro to keep fighting. Now, while Bright may eventually fill a sort of fatherly role to Amuro, at the moment, he's using a very cynical approach to drive Amuro by isolating him and riding him harder than the other members of the crew. Now, we will see this approach backfire once Amuro reaches a breaking point, and it's worth noting that Amuro seems to know that he's being manipulated by Bright. Now, the second theme that we've seen so far is that of the conflict between young and old, which is sometimes manifested as novelty versus tradition. Tomino famously believes in the notion that children are the future and that adults often need to just get out of their way. In the episode Vote to Attack, we saw a clear divide between those willing to fight and those who wanted to run away from Char. Now, I have to say, there is some wisdom in discretion and in choosing your battles, and I think that the young are always more up for a fight than the elderly, even when it's not necessarily a good idea. Now, to flip that notion on its head, Char chose to retreat from the Gundam while the older Gundam engaged Amuro in his Zaku 1 and was killed for his trouble. So despite the fact that we got two very similar scenarios in which the young and old disagreed, one in which the young were wanting to fight and the other in which the younger wanted to retreat, in both cases the older characters were wrong. This also comes up in the episode Escape from Luna 2, but takes the form of older tradition being overtaken by unconventional and novel warfare tactics. Orthodoxy in this case is represented by the stodgy Commandant Joaquin, while Bright and Char represent a sort of new guard that understand how much the world has really changed. Now, by the end of the episode, the senior Captain Paolo of the White Base symbolically dies, while the young White Base crew is left to pick up the pieces. While Joaquin eventually comes around to the understanding that the White Base needs his support and not more bureaucracy. He laments the dark times that they're living in, that these kids are forced to take on such a responsibility without the help of their elders. These are just two of the major series themes that have been expressed thoroughly in just the first couple of episodes, but we're going to see more instances of both of these as well as some additional ideas that come up later in the story. The episode opens with a very poignant interaction between Amuro and a civilian man. Amuro is helping Fraubo get everyone fresh towels, and she's touched when Amuro goes to help fix a toy car for the grandson of this elderly man. He tells Amuro how ever since the boy's parents died, all he does is play with that toy car. This in and of itself is a harsh reality of war where an orphan is finding comfort in a possession, probably the only scrap of stability in the boy's life since leaving Side 7. The man also references the 1-week battle, which gives us just a hint of lore, just like Captain Paolo name-dropping the Battle of Loom when describing Char. These little hints of verisimilitude are so powerful in stories. It's not a massive lore dump where they feel the need to expand on every single detail for the sake of the audience. It's like when Han Solo mentioned the Kessel Run, or Luke Skywalker talks about bullseyeing womp rats. These are meant to be commonly known and understood details of the world. When was the last time you casually referenced something in conversation with someone and felt the need to explain it as if a third party was listening in and wouldn't get the reference? This is a level of realism that I think is lost on a lot of viewers, and it's lost in a lot of modern media too, and it's such a brilliant way to make a fictional world feel lived in and complete. We get a hint of foreshadowing when Amuro tells the man that his mother still lives on Earth. I'm sure that information won't come up again anytime in the near future. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Finally, the conversation ends when the man tells Amuro that he wants to take the boy back to the coffee plantation where he grew up on Earth. He says that he doesn't care if the Zeons attack or if the feds tell him to leave, that he'd rather die a free man and be buried on Earth than be subjugated or ordered around. This touches on the second half of the main theme that Tomino explicitly mentioned in the NHK documentary, which is freedom. This man, with all of the wisdom that comes with age, chooses freedom over safety. To be free is more important than to be alive. I love these sorts of small character moments and interactions in Gundam, and it's a tradition that's carried over even well into some of the later installments. I would go so far as to say that the interaction between Mineva Zabi and the barkeeper in Gundam Unicorn is a callback to this very moment. I don't think it's a coincidence that she's drinking coffee in that scene either. Next, we see a bit of a tender moment between Bright and Mirai. Mirai is nervous about entering the Earth's atmosphere in the White Base, as it will be her first time piloting a ship that large, and she also expresses her fear about Char attacking again. Bright assures her that she'll do just fine and that she doesn't need to worry about Char, to just focus on the re-entry. Contrast this with the way that Bright has spoken to Sayla or Amuro so far, and it's clear that he's already showing a bit of favoritism even this early on. We also get to meet Lieutenant Reed, a Federation officer that is escorting the White Base crew to Earth. Now, while he's not as confrontational as Joaquin, even in this short interaction you can tell that he looks down on the young White Base crew and will be a constant thorn in Bright's side once they reach Earth. Char briefs 3 Zeon pilots on his plan. It's a risky move to start a battle this close to the Earth's gravity well, but as we'll see, most of the Federation officers are skeptical that Char would even try to attack. Just as Joaquin assumed that Char would play it safe, Camilla and the others underestimate Char's aggressive tactics. Again, this harkens back to the conflict between conventional and unconventional thinking. Bright's speech over the loudspeakers interrupted by the Zeon attack. Amuro, who nervously waits in the Gundam, launches into action right away. Sayla gives him a 4-minute time limit before he needs to rejoin the White Base, otherwise he'll be pulled into the Earth's gravity well. She's reassuring to him, but still he lacks confidence in his own ability to face Char under such extreme circumstances. Interestingly, we don't get any sort of hesitation from Sayla about fighting Char the way that he was nervous about potentially attacking his sister. Perhaps she didn't realize that the man she saw that looked like Casval was actually Char. I sincerely doubt that she would be so cold as to send Amuro to fight her own brother, even if it were just an off chance. Again, we see a totally different side to Bright Noah when he's caught up in the middle of a battle. No longer is he reassuring and stoic, but instead he's shouting orders and floundering. It's Mirai who tells him to calm down, that none of the crew is used to this type of fighting. I really love the contrast here between Mirai and Bright, because while Mirai gets anxious in the anticipation of a battle, with Bright being calm and confident, when things go sideways, she is quick and capable while Bright panics. They complement one another by excelling in each other's weak areas. Amuro hypes himself up ahead of another battle with Char, saying that he'll match him move for move. Now, over the last couple of episodes, we've seen Char change up tactics and Amuro struggle to keep up. But in this fight, Amuro seems much more capable, perhaps due in part to the Gundam's learning computer, but Amuro himself seems to learn and get better with each encounter. It does make you wonder how much of Amuro's skill is down to the Gundam and how much of this is his latent new type awakening. In this battle, Amuro is on the wrong side of a 4 versus 1, and doing quite well in spite of it. Although Char gets in a few shots here and there, Amuro switches up tactics on the fly after using up his bazooka ammo, and even dispatches a Zaku with just his Vulcans. Now this is not down to the Gundam's learning computer, but rather in the decisions that Amuro is making, all the while Sayla providing support in the form of status reports and sending out the Gundam hammer for him. The White Base crew scrambles to provide covering fire after Lieutenant Reed's entry capsule is hit. They manage to get him on board even though he's underestimating them every step of the way. At this point, Amuro and Char are trading blows when Char himself comments on Amuro's skills improving. Time's up and Char retreats to avoid burning up on atmospheric entry, but Amuro keeps firing at Crown, trying to finish him off before heading back to White Base. I don't think in this moment that Amuro is trying to protect the White Base. After all, it's not as though Crown would have had a clear shot at the ship anyway. I think that this may be indicative of Amuro's confidence starting to kick in. And as we'll see in later episodes when he starts counting off enemies as he shoots them down, he becomes much more arrogant in his skills even if he's still afraid of war in general. Lieutenant Reed calls Bright and Amuro amateurs for failing to get the Gundam back aboard the White Base, again reflecting the friction between experienced officers and the unconventional White Base crew. But Bright is correct to point out that if Amuro had not launched in the Gundam, that they would have all been killed. Amuro quickly refers back to the Gundam manual for info about re-entry. Lucky to have found that literal plot armor in the book. It turns out to be basically a thermo-insulating sheet, which kind of begs the question why all mobile suits don't carry one. This is retconned in later incarnations of the scene to be much more attuned specifically to the Gundam instead of just a film that it carries. This is one change that I think makes a lot of sense, not just for this scene, but in future series where atmospheric re-entry occurs. There's a bit of that trademark Gundam dramatic irony where we as the viewers know that Amuro is alright, but the crew on the white base fears the worst, and we can particularly see the distress on Sayla and Fraubo's faces. It's a major moment for Fraubo in particular, because for one thing, she's not even supposed to be on the bridge of the white base, but you can tell from her facial expression that she's not grieving for Amuro's death, but rather she almost feels like she failed to protect Amuro in some way. Dren is the first to pick up on Char's backup plan. Even though they weren't able to shoot down the white base, they've thrown them off course and sent them into Zeon-occupied territory on Earth. Typical of Char, he wouldn't have wanted to tell his men this prior to heading out, and risk them letting up their attack since they knew there would be a backup plan. It's cynical and brilliant on his part, like an inverse mirror image of Bright Noah in the way he manipulates his subordinates. He himself says that war is cruel business, saying the truth that Bright likely believes as well out loud. We meet the confident and charming Garmazabi in a brief exchange with Char. He doesn't seem at all intimidated by the fact that his friend has lost 8 Zakus to the Gundam already. Beyond that, we don't get much of Garma's character so far, but he and his role in the war play a huge part in how things will play out later in the story. The Gundam flies heroically through the air alongside the white base, and we get to see Bright's tough exterior break down just a little bit when a hopeful smile creeps across his face. Lieutenant Reed expresses his frustration while Bright calmly explains how all of this has gone to Char's plan. Again, the experienced Reed doesn't understand the kind of tactician that Char is. The episode closes with Garma's ship on the horizon, ready to pounce. That's it for episode 5. Amuro was of course extremely lucky that the Gundam was designed for atmospheric re-entry, but Char, thinking tactically as always, has sprung a trap for them on Earth, all but delivering them to the hands of Garmazabi. Now Garma is the second member of the Zabi family we've met so far, and he's the youngest of the bunch. This begins our journey into the second arc of the story with the white base and its crew on Earth. Be sure to let me know what you think down below in the comments. As always, if you dig this series, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you later.